Something strange happens to men after 40, but nobody talks about it. They don't rage, they don't protest, they just disappear. Not physically, not dramatically. They're still at work, still paying bills, still showing up for their kids. But something inside them goes quiet. A part that used to fight, to hope, to love, now just wants peace. He doesn't die. He just stops trying. One day, he's arguing to be understood. The next, he's too tired to explain. He used to defend himself, to prove his intentions, to fix what was broken. But now, he lets silence win. Because he's learned that silence costs less than chaos. Millions of men are making that choice, not out of hate, but out of survival. See, for years he thought partnership meant teamwork, that if he gave enough, worked enough, loved enough, it would be reciprocated. But what he discovered was a slow erosion of respect, of appreciation, of peace. Every argument took something from him. Every accusation, every emotional storm, chipped away at the part of him that still believed in partnership. No, he's not bitter. He's just done trading his sanity for companionship. You won't see this man ranting online or posting cryptic messages. You'll just notice he's different. He doesn't engage in drama. He avoids confrontation. He moves with quiet purpose. While others are fighting to be right, he's fighting to stay calm. And that calm, that's the new freedom. Because for men over 40, peace has become the ultimate luxury. Not a car, not status, not validation. Just the quiet of a life with no one constantly questioning his worth. He's lived through the years of proving himself. To bosses, to women, to the world. And he's realized something no one taught him when he was young. The moment you stop chasing approval, you start breathing again. What most people mistake for loneliness is actually recovery. He's not isolating, he's detoxing. From manipulation, from guilt, from the endless pressure to perform emotionally. You see, when a man gives decades of his life trying to keep the peace, and all it earns him is more conflict, eventually he learns that the only way to win is not to play. That's the silence you're hearing. It's not defeat, it's liberation. So when you see that man sitting alone at a cafe, reading quietly instead of arguing, don't pity him. He's not broken. He's free. He's not avoiding love. He's avoiding chaos. He's not bitter at women. He's just tired of fighting to be seen. Because somewhere along the way, he realized peace isn't the absence of love. It's what love was supposed to bring. And for men over 40, that realization changes everything. The world might call it giving up, but he knows better. It's not surrender, it's self-preservation. And that's the silence no one talks about. Conflict doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with sighs. Long, exhausted sighs from a man who's already lost the argument in his head 100 times before it even starts. He knows how it'll go. The accusations, the deflection, the guilt trip dressed as concern. So he stays quiet, not because he agrees, but because he knows nothing he says will matter. See, men over 40 have learned a painful truth. Every fight has a hidden price, and the currency isn't money. It's peace of mind. For years he thought communication was the solution. That if he stayed calm, explained clearly, stayed patient, things would get better. But what he discovered was that in modern relationships, calm is often mistaken for cold, logic for arrogance, and boundaries for disrespect. So he learned to pick his battles until there were no battles left worth fighting. That's what nobody sees when they judge him for being distant. They don't see the years of emotional negotiation, the nights spent trying to make sense of feelings that changed without warning. They don't see how many times he said sorry just to restore the illusion of peace. They just see the aftermath. A man who looks detached. But that detachment, it's not emotional absence. It's self-defense. He's been told to be emotionally available, to open up, to be vulnerable. But vulnerability without safety isn't bravery. It's suicide. And for many men, that lesson came too late. They opened their hearts, shared their fears, and watched it all get used against them in the next argument. Every confession became ammunition. Every weakness became a weapon. So they built walls, not to keep love out, but to keep their sanity in. It's easy to mock a man for going silent. It's harder to admit that maybe he earned that silence, that maybe he's not emotionally unavailable, he's emotionally bankrupt. Years of overgiving, over-apologizing, over-explaining left him with nothing left to spend. Because in the modern battlefield of relationships, the man who wants peace often ends up the villain. The more he tries to fix, the more broken he becomes. The more he sacrifices, the more invisible he feels. And at some point, every man reaches the same breaking point. The moment he asks himself, "What am I still fighting for?" When the answer is nothing, that's when he walks away. Not out of hate, but because the cost finally outweighs the connection. So when you see that man who stopped arguing, who no longer reacts, who seems distant, understand this. He's not cold. He's protecting what little peace he has left. He's learned that sometimes silence isn't the lack of love. It's the last act of self-respect. For most of his life, he thought success meant having it all. The career, the house, the relationship, the constant reassurance that he was doing the right thing. But one day, somewhere after 40, he realized that everything he thought he wanted came with noise. Endless opinions. Endless expectations. Endless pressure to be everything for everyone, except himself. And that's when something inside him shifted. Peace, the thing he once took for granted, became priceless. Because when you've spent decades chasing validation, the quiet feels strange at first. It feels like failure, like emptiness. But eventually, it starts to feel like healing. He wakes up and there's no argument waiting in the air. No tension hiding behind good morning smiles. No emotional guessing games. Just stillness. Coffee in silence. A walk with no destination. Freedom from the need to perform. That's the luxury men over 40 are discovering. The peace of not needing to prove their worth every single day. See, he's been a provider for so long that he forgot what it feels like to simply exist without someone demanding his energy. Now, he realizes that peace isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of clarity. He doesn't crave attention anymore. He craves equilibrium. Because love built on anxiety isn't love. It's addiction. And he's detoxing from it. He's no longer impressed by drama disguised as passion or guilt disguised as care. He's seen too many strong relationships crumble under the weight of control and competition. Now, peace is the only flex. He doesn't need to raise his voice to prove he's a man. He doesn't need to win arguments to feel respected. He doesn't even need to be understood. He just needs to be left in serenity. That's the irony. The same man society once called boring, detached, or emotionally distant. He's the one who's finally free. Because peace is power. It's the rarest form of strength. Quiet, calm, untouchable. It's not that he stopped believing in love. He just stopped believing that love has to come with war. He's learned to enjoy the small things. A clean home, a clear mind, a day that doesn't drain him. He doesn't chase adrenaline anymore. He chases alignment. And when he sits alone now, he's not lonely. He's recharged. He's restored. He's at peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need permission, validation, or approval. Because at 40, men stop asking for peace. They start protecting it. And once they find it, they'll never trade it again. Not for excitement, not for validation, not even for love. Because after a lifetime of conflict, they finally understand. Peace isn't the reward. It's the goal. He used to fear being alone. Now, he craves it. There was a time when silence felt like punishment, a reminder that no one was there to listen. But somewhere after 40, silence started sounding like peace. He wakes up without tension hanging in the air. No alarms of accusation. No emotional negotiations before coffee. Just quiet. And for the first time in years, that quiet doesn't scare him. It soothes him. He's not escaping love. He's escaping the noise that pretended to be love. The constant pressure to explain, to fix, to prove. The endless emotional treadmill that always led him back to the same place. Not enough. Now, he's rediscovering the man he buried beneath years of being needed. The world doesn't talk about this version of manhood, the one built on stillness, not struggle. Because society only celebrates men when they're sacrificing, providing, performing. But what about when they stop performing? That's when the solitary man rises. He starts going to the gym, not to impress anyone, but to feel capable again. He travels, not to escape, but to remember how wide the world really is. He learns new skills, reads books he never had time for, reconnects with old friends who knew him before the noise. And slowly, he realizes something profound. Peace is addictive. The same man who once begged for someone's attention now guards his solitude like treasure. Because in the stillness, he finds something modern relationships rarely give: clarity. He begins to understand himself, not as a partner or a provider or a protector, but as a person. He starts living for meaning instead of maintenance. And for the first time in decades, he feels alive without needing to be validated. See, society calls this loneliness, but it isn't. Loneliness is wanting company. Solitude is enjoying your own. He's not building walls anymore. He's building peace. And in that peace, he finds something rare: self-respect reborn. The solitary man doesn't hate women. He doesn't hate love. He just refuses to destroy himself trying to hold on to something that can't handle his silence. Because solitude taught him the truth. If peace feels like loneliness, you've never known real peace. He's not bitter. He's balanced. He's not lost. He's leveled up. He no longer measures his worth by who stays. He measures it by what he can walk away from without losing himself. That's the rise of the solitary man. Not a man who gave up on love, but a man who finally fell in love with peace. When a man goes quiet, most women take it personally. They think silence means anger. Distance means disinterest. Withdrawal means he stopped caring. But that's not it. What women don't understand is that a man's silence is rarely about her. It's about him. It's about survival. Because when a man has spent decades trying to be heard, only to be misunderstood, corrected, or dismissed, eventually he learns that silence is safer. See, when he was younger, he used to talk. He tried to express himself, to open up, to communicate. But every time he did, his honesty was judged, his emotions were weaponized, his vulnerabilities were used as evidence in the next argument. So he learned to stop explaining himself. Not out of spite, but out of exhaustion. He realized that peace doesn't always mean resolution. Sometimes peace just means not repeating yourself anymore. That's what women don't see. They don't see the hundreds of invisible micro cuts that made him stop bleeding out his thoughts. They only see the quiet man in front of them and mistake calm for coldness. But men feel deeply. More deeply than most people will ever know. They just process pain differently. When they love in actions, not essays. When they're hurt, they don't shout. They shut down. Because for men, Words have stopped working. He's learned that explaining himself doesn't build bridges. It builds targets. So, he does the only thing he can to protect what's left of his sanity. He retreats into quiet. It's not punishment, it's preservation. And this is where the misunderstanding begins, because when he goes silent, she interprets it as rejection. So she pushes harder, demands answers, provokes reaction. But what she doesn't realize is that every push just proves his point, that peace is impossible in a place where emotions are weapons. So, he stops defending himself. He stops engaging. He stops chasing understanding from someone who only listens to reply. And that's when the relationship dies. Not with a scream, but with a sigh. Because when a man finally stops talking, it's not because he doesn't have words left. It's because he knows they'll never land. Men over 40 have mastered this painful art of emotional withdrawal. Not because they lack feeling, but because they've learned that peace and partnership rarely coexist anymore. He's not trying to win. He's trying to protect the little stillness left inside him. So when you see that quiet man, sitting still, saying little, understand this. He's not being stubborn. He's saving himself. Because sometimes silence isn't indifference. It's what love looks like when it's tired of hurting. Maybe this is what evolution looks like. Not men giving up, but men waking up. Because somewhere along the way, the definition of love changed. It stopped being about connection and started being about conditions. It stopped feeling like home and started feeling like a job interview, where one mistake could cost you everything. So men did what men have always done when the world stops making sense. They adapted. They simplified. They walked away. And not in bitterness, not in rebellion, but in quiet clarity. See, men over 40 aren't running from women. They're running toward peace. They've seen the emotional games, the endless tests, the power struggles dressed up as intimacy. They've watched good men lose themselves trying to keep love alive that only loved them when they were performing. They've watched fathers turned into visitors, providers turned into punching bags, and loyalty repaid with blame. So they decided, enough. The future of relationships won't be built on guilt or fear or obligation. It'll be built on choice. Two people who choose peace together, not pain disguised as passion. Men are realizing something revolutionary. You don't have to destroy yourself to prove you care. You don't have to bleed to be believed. You don't have to fight to be valued. Because real love shouldn't feel like survival. It should feel like safety. And when that safety disappears, love dies long before the relationship does. That's why so many men are choosing to stand alone, not because they don't want love, but because they've learned that peace without partnership is better than partnership without peace. They're finding beauty in solitude, purpose in stillness, and confidence in quiet. They're not afraid of being alone anymore. They're afraid of losing themselves again. Because the truth is, a man at peace is dangerous. Not because he's violent or cold, but because he can't be manipulated anymore. You can't guilt a man who's made peace with solitude. You can't threaten to leave when he's already walked away from chaos. You can't control someone who's chosen calm over company. And that's the new kind of strength. Quiet, disciplined, self-contained. The future of relationships won't belong to the loudest people demanding love on their terms. It'll belong to the few who understand that peace is love. Because the man who chooses peace doesn't stop loving. He just stops begging for it. He's not rejecting connection. He's refining it. He's not closing his heart. He's guarding it from noise that calls itself affection. And when he finally meets someone who values his silence as much as his presence, someone who understands that peace isn't boring, it's sacred, then, and only then, will he open up again. Not out of need, but out of choice. Because men over 40 aren't choosing loneliness. They're choosing evolution. And evolution always starts with peace.